when we're building our relationship with ourselves, when we've understood the science, the laws that constitute, govern, sustain us, when we start to recognize the divine being as ourselves, and we reach for the intimacy, we will develop, we sometimes run into a struggle because all of our programming previously was about building relationships outside of ourselves. And it just is really difficult to develop a relationship with someone you don't know, you can't see, that is not close to you. It's almost impossible to develop that kind of relationship, closeness, a trust, an opening for each of us. So it's difficult to do with an entity outside of ourselves or away from ourselves or someone we can't see. And so much of our programming has been about that. We see the absolute power of God as an entity outside of ourselves, up in the sky, away from ourselves. So our conversation with the absolute power becomes a want, a wish, a plea. We pray, but we're praying outwardly. And the relationship is a relationship we're trying to develop with the unseen, or an entity that's away from us, and we're not getting the intimacy because we can't see the person. We can't see the entity. So when we start seeing the divine as ourselves, it's easier for us to connect with the entity that's within us, that is us, rather than the connection, trying to connect with something outward. Once we start understanding that our divine being is who we are, it's easier for us to build a relationship and intimacy. We start building trust with that true aspect of ourselves when we start putting it into practice. When we feel and sense that struggle that happens because we're so used to or so programmed to create the relationship outwardly, to find the help we're looking for from the outside. So many of us have relationships or histories of relationships where we've been looking or searching for that one person that's going to make us whole, and we look outside of ourselves. We sense how much love we have to give, all that we could be to another person, and so we're looking for that person to represent for us our divine self. And the saying, you can't make a man or you can't make a woman your God, because what happens when you do that is that you put all of that belief and faith and hope in that person. And the most unreliable thing in the entire world is human beings. And so once we understand that, we understand that we're putting way too much faith in the nature of a human being. And what we see, and the result of that is we see every single day, we read it in the paper, someone who's losing their God, losing their man or losing their woman. And if God gets up and leaves you, all bets are off. And so we see them shooting each other and committing suicide afterwards and things of that nature, because we have not anchored the relationship with our divine being. That relationship is the entity that we can become intimate with, that connects us directly to the absolute power. So rather than trying to build a relationship outwardly, rather than pleading or praying or wanting or wishing outwardly, we are in an intimate relationship with the divine nature of ourselves. And because we build that relationship, because we put that relationship into practice every single day, we are able to directly take our desires from that absolute power. We know that the most agonizing thing for human beings is your desires that are unfulfilled. Those desires, those what we call desires that are unfulfilled, they're agonizing because they come from our ego. We want you to put away your wants and wishes, and we want you to listen and participate in the creative desires or the intuitively inspired ideas of your divine being, which is directly related to the absolute power. So when we build that relationship, when we begin to trust that relationship by putting it into practice every day, we put it into practice when we feel that struggle. When we feel the struggle, we don't respond with, see, nobody really cares about me. See, I can't feel you right now. You're not giving me what I need. That's putting the onus on something outside of yourself. And what you're really saying is, I have yet to spend time developing that relationship with my divine being. I have not yet created that which I want or wish for in another human being. I have not yet created it in myself. So I need another human being to come fulfill that for me. And that's never going to happen. And if it does happen, then we are subject to the person who came into our life. And we'll spend most of our time fearful and afraid, and of harmony and balance, peace and joy. And those things we establish within ourselves by building the relationship with our divine being, by building an intimate relationship with our divine being, because that entity is within us, close to us, next to us, always with us, 24 hours a day. We don't have to look outward for the things that we desire, but the things that we feel we need. We have it right here within us.